It was supposed to be just another Monday. The kind where yawns stretch longer than lectures and time ticks slower than the fan above. The classroom of grade 10B at Hillside High School buzzed with the usual low chatter, phones tucked under desks, gum chewing masked behind half-hearted textbook flips. The students were waiting, not for knowledge, but for another uneventful period to pass. No one was ready for what would unfold that day, and no one could imagine how one slap would ignite a storm that would shatter the silence in their hearts forever. She entered the room quietly, books clutched to her chest, her thin framed glasses slightly foggy from the morning humidity. Miss Rania wasn't new to the school, but it was only her third month teaching Class 10B, a group so notoriously unruly that 3 teachers had quit before her. Yet she stood there, her soft beige scarf perfectly pinned, her eyes calm, carrying the same warmth one might find in a mother's lullaby. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice gentle but clear. A few students mocked her, mimicking her accent in whispers. A paper ball flew across the room. Another student clicked his pen rhythmically in rebellion. She didn't flinch. She simply placed her books down and began writing the day's topic on the board. Irony played in the air. The classroom, far from silent, buzzed with defiance. In the back row sat Ayaan, tall, muscular, and known as the King of Chaos. His father was rich, his mother absent, and his heart full of untamed anger. He ran that class like a prison yard. No teacher dared cross him. No student dared speak against him. And today, for reasons buried deep in a troubled home and a wounded soul, he decided he was going to break the new teacher. His friends egged him on with murmurs and winks. As Miss Rania spoke about literature, metaphors, and the art of expressing emotion without noise, Ayaan made mocking faces, then began tapping his desk with louder thuds. When she turned to face him with calm eyes, he smirked. "Miss, are we learning about silence because that's all your career will have if you keep coming here?" His words cut through the air. The class laughed. Miss Rania paused. No anger. No scolding. Just a soft reply. "Ayaan, sometimes the loudest voices are trying hardest not to be heard. Would you like to share something more meaningful?" That silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was tension, sharp and cold. And then, without warning, without thought, without any sense of what this action could mean for the rest of his life, Ayaan stood up, walked to the front, and before anyone could move the sound cracked like lightning. Gasps echoed. A pen dropped. A girl screamed. And Miss Rania stood still. Her cheek turned a shade of crimson, her glasses tilted on her nose. But her posture didn't break. Her eyes didn't water. She looked into his, deeply, gently, silently, and said nothing. That silence, that unbearable silence, louder than 1,000 screams. Ayaan froze. For the first time, he didn't feel like a lion in the jungle. He felt like a child standing before a mirror that reflected not his strength, but his brokenness. The class expected chaos. A slap back. A screaming match. Expulsion threats. But all Miss Rania did was straighten her glasses, walk to her desk, and sit down. "Please open your books," she said. "We'll begin now." No one moved. Not even Ayaan. The principal, alerted by the scream, burst in moments later, saw her face, and demanded answers. But Miss Rania stood and said softly, "We were just about to begin the lesson." The principal was stunned. "But your face, did someone?" She nodded once. "Yes. But sometimes, sir, when someone hits you, it says more about their pain than your weakness." She refused to file a complaint. She refused to yell. She only requested one thing, to speak to Ayaan in private. Alone. What happened behind those closed doors would change both their lives. But before we get there, let's go back, because Miss Rania wasn't just a kind-hearted teacher. Her story was one of deep pain, deeper strength, and a secret no one at Hillside High had ever guessed. Years ago, Rania was a literature scholar, winning awards across the country. But one night, while returning from a conference, her car was hit by a drunk driver. The crash killed her younger brother, her only family, and left her in a coma for weeks. When she woke up, the world was different. Her joy was gone, her dreams buried. She couldn't hear loud noises without trembling. And she couldn't bear the silence of her own home. So she chose to return to where life begins again, a classroom. In every student, she searched for a flicker of the boy she lost. In every story, she searched for healing. And that's why, when Ayaan's hand struck her, she didn't see a bully, she saw a child in pain. She saw someone who, like her, was drowning in silence. Inside the closed room, she sat down across from Ayaan, who now avoided eye contact. His fists were clenched. He expected her to yell, maybe cry. Instead, she poured him tea. "Do you want to tell me why you're so angry?" she asked. He didn't answer. She waited. Minutes passed. Then he broke. His voice cracked. "My father, he hits me. When he's drunk. When I talk. When I don't talk." The words spilled out like poison escaping a bottle. "I hate him. I hate me. I hate everyone who tries to help me." Rania nodded slowly. "And you thought if you hurt someone first, maybe no one could hurt you anymore." His eyes welled. "Why aren't you angry at me?" She placed her hand on her cheek where he had hit her. "Because I've felt pain too. And I know it doesn't go away by passing it on. It only grows. But healing, that begins with someone refusing to return the slap." Ayaan cried. For the first time in years. And in that tiny room, amidst quiet tears and trembling breaths, a strange transformation began. She didn't forgive him because he deserved it, she forgave him because he needed it. The next day, Miss Rania returned to class with the same soft grace. But something had changed. The students, once wild and disrespectful, sat straighter. Ayaan came in late, not to cause trouble, but to apologize in front of everyone. "What I did was unforgivable. But Miss Rania forgave me. I don't deserve it, but I'm going to earn it." The class clapped. Not mockingly, but with genuine awe. From that day on, he began to change. He stayed after class to help her carry books. He started reading the novels she recommended. He even began writing poetry, raw, honest, beautiful. Miss Rania printed his first poem and placed it on the board with the title, "The Loudest Cry is Often Silent." But just as things began to heal, a storm was coming. Someone recorded the slap. The video was leaked. It went viral. The school board got involved. Parents demanded her resignation, not because of the slap, but because she allowed it, without punishment. The media twisted the story. Some called her a saint. Others called her weak. But before the board could make their final decision, something unexpected happened. Ayaan's father, the very man who had made his son a vessel of violence, came to the school. His face pale, his voice shaking, and in front of the entire staff, he said, "I saw the video. I saw what my son did. And I saw what this woman did in return. And I realized, if anyone deserves to teach my son how to be a man, it's her. Not me." He broke down, apologized to her, hugged his son, for the first time, ever. And Miss Rania, she stayed silent. Her tears did the talking. By the end of the week, the board not only allowed her to stay, they gave her an award for transformational teaching. Ayaan, once the king of chaos, became the quiet leader. And Miss Rania, she became a legend. But more than that, she became a mirror in which every broken soul saw a chance to heal. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do, is choose not to fight back. To break the cycle, to forgive, to love, even when it hurts. The whispers never really stopped. Even after the slap video faded from trending topics, even after Ayaan transformed from a tempest to a torchbearer, even after Miss Rania became a symbol of strength across Hillside High, something always lingered in the air. Curiosity, wonder, mystery. Who was this woman who could forgive the unforgivable? Why did she never raise her voice? What pain had molded her into someone so composed it frightened even the wildest spirits into stillness? Only a few knew parts of the truth. A handful of teachers had heard rumors about the accident that changed her life. A few glimpsed the sadness behind her smile. But no one, not even Ayaan, knew the whole story. That is, until one rainy Thursday morning, when the past, dressed in a charcoal suit and regret, walked through the school gates and knocked on her classroom door. The class was in the middle of a debate on empathy in literature. Ayaan, now a sharp thinker and thoughtful speaker, was standing before the board, arguing how even villains in stories are often victims in disguise. Miss Rania watched him with quiet pride. Her heart still carried bruises, but moments like these stitched them with golden thread. And then, the knock. 3 gentle taps, but something in them made her freeze. She turned toward the door, her expression unreadable. When she opened it, the hallway light silhouetted a tall man in his late 30s, with graying temples, rain-speckled shoes, and eyes that carried years of sorrow. The moment their gazes met, time twisted. Her breath hitched. She gripped the doorframe. "Asim," she whispered. The students were stunned. Miss Rania never called anyone by their first name. And her tone, it wasn't her usual softness. It was something deeper, something haunted. Asim stepped inside, removing his cap. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, his voice low. "You stopped replying. I heard what happened here, I had to see you." The students were frozen. Ayaan, unsure of his role anymore, stepped closer protectively. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly, eyes never leaving Asim's. "Class dismissed," she murmured. No one argued. They left with glances over their shoulders, questions burning in their minds. When the room emptied, Rania sat down at her desk, her hands trembling. Asim remained standing. "You look different," he said. "Still graceful, but older." "Grief does that," she replied. Silence hung again. This time, not one of peace, but of ghosts. 10 years ago, Asim and Rania were engaged. Both literature scholars, both passionate about teaching, both orphaned early in life and drawn to each other's unspoken pain. They planned to build a school together. A home. A life stitched with words and wonder. But on the night of their engagement party, Asim never showed up. Rania waited for hours before finally calling his phone, only to hear the voice of a woman. "He's with me now," the voice had said coldly. "He's made his choice." That night, Rania had fled to her brother, who was the only family she had left. They went for a long drive, trying to escape heartbreak with headlights in highway miles. The crash that followed didn't just shatter bones, it shattered her world. Her brother died. She survived. And the man she loved, the man who never explained why, disappeared from her life like fog under sunlight. "Until now. I didn't know how to face you," Asim said now, his voice cracking. "I was a coward. I let my family pressure me into an arranged marriage that I never wanted. I thought I was protecting you from the shame of it all. But when I heard what happened here, how you forgave that student, how you chose compassion over revenge, I realized, you've become everything I always admired. Everything I'm not." Rania looked at him. Her eyes were dry, but her voice was soft steel. "You didn't just leave me, Asim. You left a scared girl who had no one. And because of that, my brother died protecting my heart when I couldn't protect his." That silence again. The kind that screams. He sank to his knees. "I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I wanted to see you. One last time. And tell you, that I still love you." Her breath caught again. But this time, she exhaled. Slowly. Steadily. "Love isn't something you say, Asim. It's something you stay for. And you left." She stood, gently helping him up. "But, thank you. For the apology. Closure is a kind of healing too." He left. Just like before. But this time, she wasn't broken. She was whole. The following week, the school principal invited Miss Rania to speak at the National Education Conference. The theme, turning trauma into transformation. It was the first time she would tell her full story publicly. And as she stood before a crowd of 500 educators, lights shining, mics buzzing, her voice didn't shake. "A few months ago," she began, "I was slapped by a student in front of 30 others. What followed wasn't a punishment. It was a journey. One that reminded me that most brokenness is invisible. That many children fight wars we'll never see. That every slap, every scream, every act of rebellion is often a desperate cry for connection." She paused. The room leaned in. "But this isn't just about students. I, too, was once broken. Left by someone I trusted. Lost my brother in a crash that should have taken me. I lived in silence. Until I chose to teach. And in teaching others, I began to reteach myself. That healing doesn't come from control. It comes from compassion." She didn't expect the standing ovation. But it came. Not for her eloquence, but for her honesty. Among the crowd sat Ayaan, now wearing a school badge that read, "Peer Counselor in Training." He wiped a tear. He had come a long way, and he owed it all to the woman who refused to hit back. The days that followed were filled with new beginnings. Miss Rania started an after-school program called The Quiet Corner, a safe space for students dealing with trauma, anxiety, or emotional struggles. Ayaan was the first to volunteer. Slowly, more students joined. Even the teachers began attending the sessions, learning how to manage stress and burnout. The school transformed, not just in discipline, but in spirit. One morning, Ayaan surprised her with a gift, a framed painting. It showed a hand raised in anger, being caught mid-air by another hand glowing with light. Below it, the words, "She hung it in the hallway where the slap once happened." But just when she thought her story had found peace, the letter arrived. Typed, no return address. It read, "You saved him. But who will save the others?" Inside was a USB. Curious, she plugged it into her laptop. What she saw next made her blood run cold. Hidden camera footage of a teacher in another school, being abused, mocked, bullied. No one helping. A girl crying in the corner. A boy punching walls. And then the screen cut to black. Miss Rania stared at the screen. Her hands clenched. This wasn't over. Her mission, her healing, had only just begun. That night, she called. Ayaan, we're going to other schools, she said. To teach, to listen, to fight for the invisible ones. He didn't hesitate. I'm with you, miss. Wherever this goes. Together, they started Project Resilience, a mobile emotional literacy program for troubled schools. And in every institution they visited, they told their story. The slap, the silence, the forgiveness, the healing. Years later, when Miss Rania was honored with the National Medal of Education, she stood on the same stage where she once whispered through pain. But this time, she smiled. Truly smiled. This award isn't mine alone, she said. It belongs to every student who ever felt unseen. Every teacher who chose compassion over punishment. Every person who learned that even after the darkest slap, there can still be light. In the audience, Ayaan stood proud. Not as a student anymore, but as a young man now studying psychology, ready to become a teacher himself. Ready to be the mirror Miss Rania had once been for him. Because in the end, it was never just about one slap. It was about what you do after. Project Resilience had started as a seed, born from pain, watered with healing, and nurtured by the belief that even the most troubled souls deserve a chance to grow. With Ayaan by her side, Miss Rania traveled from school to school, sometimes speaking to crowds of hundreds, other times sitting silently across from one broken child in the back of a dusty classroom. They spoke not as experts, but as survivors. Not as perfect examples, but as living proof that even shattered people can become safe places for others. Slowly, their names began to echo beyond Hillside High. Newspapers wrote about them. Education boards began to listen. Parents emailed. Students wrote letters. You made me feel seen. You stopped me from making a terrible choice. Because of you, I told someone. Rania kept each message in a box wrapped in blue silk, a box she never opened without tears. She didn't do this for praise. She did it because she still remembered what it felt like to be unheard. But with the rise of light, came the return of shadow. It began quietly. A rumor here, a whisper there, a politician's aide raising an eyebrow. Isn't it dangerous for a teacher to be traveling with a former delinquent boy? Why are they teaching emotional lessons instead of just math and science? Who even trained her to do this trauma work? The media, once her ally, began shifting tones. And then, the breaking wave, a video, edited and twisted, released on social media showing Rania hugging a crying student, with a voiceover suggesting emotional manipulation and overreach. Within hours, hashtags flooded in. Hashtag unfit teacher. Hashtag emotional exploitation. Hashtag project exposed. The very silence she had used to heal others now roared against her. She was summoned to a disciplinary hearing. Not by her school, but by the National Education Oversight Board. Ayaan was furious. This is insane. They're punishing you for caring. But Rania remained calm. It's not about me, she said. It's about what they're afraid of. Vulnerability scares people who build power on fear. Still, her hands trembled as she entered the massive marble building for her hearing. Inside were faces, mostly stern, mostly male, mostly old. She stood.